Oh, there we go. Now we are. Hey everyone, my name is Anna. I'm a wife of an addict in recovery, and I'm also recovering myself from codependency.
And I am Mitchell. I am a gratefully recovering addict and alcoholic and codependent, and I'm grateful to be here.
And today on the Monday night meeting, we have two amazing people here, another wife and husband duo, Sheri and Matt. They're from the Untoxicated podcast. And then Matt and Sheri, is it Sober and Unashamed on Facebook, just in case if people want to head that way to give it a look at Sober and Unashamed?
That is, and that's what our blog is too. We're not as adept and frequent on social media. We get, when we want to get some good ideas from social media, we go to your page, not ours. But our blog, if you like long form, like you can already tell from this semi-introduction that I like to talk long form. If you want long form stuff, come to our blog. There's lots of essays there. Soberandunashamed.com. And then the Untoxicated podcast, like you said.
Awesome. So guys, definitely check out their podcast. Also, I know we have a lot of We Are family that already listen to them. So if you haven't already, you know what I always say, having a support system and gaining that knowledge is a massive part of our recovery. So please go check out the podcast that's there, check out the blog. And then also you guys have written a book, correct?
That's right. It's called Sober Evolution. Evolve into sobriety and recover your alcoholic marriage.
You and your
part after the colon, forget about that. Sober Evolution is what it's called.
Nice.
Awesome. So what we're going to do, guys, tonight is we're going to have them tell their story. And we're also going to take questions. So anytime in the story, if you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate. And like I always say, guys, if you're scared to ask a question, please know there are probably 10 other people right beside you that want to ask that same question. So it takes that 5 seconds. Just plug that answer and go. And trust me, it helps out all of us, honestly. So, hey, Lori, hey, Nikki, great to have you guys on. And so Matt and Sheri, I want to just kind of hand you the floor already and tell us about your story.
Thanks, Anna. Do you want to go first?
I'll let you go.
Do you want me to lead into it? You can correct me where I screwed up.
I'll just correct you.
That'd be great. We like to joke that we are Anna and Mitchell's alter ego because I'm the talker, but we had Mitchell in two of our groups a couple of weeks ago. He holds his own way more than I realized. So that's just window dressing that Anna and I are kind of. I'll get into it. Yeah. So very typical story. We met in college. We both drank and partied in college. I thought alcohol was the best thing since sliced bread. I dabbled in other drugs, but they just didn't give me that euphoric feeling like alcohol did. So I stuck primarily to alcohol, not because I was prudish, but because, when you've got everything you could possibly want, why would you go anywhere else? So Sheri, on the other hand, smoked a little weed, a little acid once in a while, mushrooms once in a while. Pretty typical 1990s.
Yeah. Alcohol always made me sick and hungover. I never really was captured by it. I just thought, you get a hangover, so I wasn't as intrigued. So it was really easy for me to kind of grow out of all of that.
It did relationship damage before we even realized it. I think you'd have to say that the early relationship damage was a combination of immaturity and alcohol. I mean, let's face it, when we meet each other in our young 20s, we're not there from a cognitive prefrontal cortex development standpoint. And so I was a very jealous person. And when I would drink, I would get way, way, way more jealous. And I'm not like, it didn't get like physical or I didn't track anyone down. I would just and this is before the days of cell phones. So when I couldn't track her down, I'd drink some beers and then spend the rest of my evening trying to figure out where she was. Really attractive from her side of the fence to have this drunk guy tracking her down all over a college campus. So it was already impacting our relationship way before we even knew it. And then, we moved in together after college. We moved around the country a little bit. My job, I got transferred a lot. Sheri had a culinary degree and would just work in fancy restaurants in whatever city that we were in. And but we just never could get along. Like, I mean,
Bickering.
yeah, and we couldn't figure it out. We loved each other. There were a lot of ways we were compatible. We liked each other's families. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
We just couldn't get along for, any extended period of time. And we would spend inordinate amounts of time trying to figure out what was the problem. Looking at everything. I was looking at everything except for alcohol. Sheri started to figure out what the problem was way sooner. We started to have a family. I have written about one of my greatest shames is that alcohol played a part in all 4 of our children's birth for me. I wasn't like shit-faced necessarily, but one way or the other, I had consumed alcohol before all 4 of those births, and it had some kind of an impact on our time in the hospital. So big, huge shame point for me, which is why we talk about it, because the only way to deal with shame is to get it out there and converse about it, and in our case, write about it. And so that's been really helpful. But so at the point where we had kids, we just diverged like a Y in the road, right? A fork in the road. I wanted to keep alcohol in our lives the same way it had always been. Saw nothing wrong with that. Sheri was time to be an adult and be a mama, and didn't understand why. Is that fair to say you didn't understand why I continued to want to drink every night?
I kind of felt like that right away. As soon as we got real jobs and graduated and we were in our first apartment out of our home state, and I was thinking, oh, wow, well, we'll become adults and we won't drink like that. And his idea and version of being an adult is to have 2 really heavily poured cocktails every night, because that was like what he grew up with. And I grew up in a home where there wasn't drinking on a regular basis. My parents were divorced when I was very young. My father was an alcoholic. So some of those red flags that I saw in Matt were things that I was used to seeing, but not necessarily registering as negative. Like it was almost comfortable for me to be in a discourse in the relationship and to not get along. And I think that was being raised by a single mom who like made it seem like you have to sacrifice yourself to be in a marriage. And, she was a pretty independent person. So I just didn't see those red flags early. But when we moved out, and then we had our budget and we had money, and I was like, why is there never any leftover rum? And well, because he would drink it all. So
funny story about that. In our first apartment, when we moved in, first time we've ever been alone, on our own together, I picked out this cabinet above the stove, and I'm like, Sheri, this will be the liquor cabinet. It's good size. This will be the liquor cabinet. But when you drink like me, there's never more than 1, maybe 2 bottles at a time, and I'm draining them as fast as I can. So where I had admired other people with fancy liquor cabinets, that just wasn't meant to be for us.
Yeah.
So, and then after the kids were born, with just lots of conflict throughout those 5 years. And then that was a real divergence in how much I wanted to drink and consume. And it just gradually got to nothing. And you were still drinking a lot.
Yeah, when our daughter turned 5, that was my first attempt at sobriety. So anyone who's familiar with our story might see that sometimes I reference that I had 10 years of active addiction. Obviously, there's no blood test you take for that. That's not a doctor's diagnosis necessarily. But that 10-year period is from the first time I tried to quit when our daughter was 5 years old until I made it over the hump. And I've been sober for a little over 6 years now. So that's how we kind of define it. So 10 just miserable years of everything, right? Trying the rules. I'm only going to drink light beer. I'm only going to drink on the weekends. I'm going to drink a glass of water between all my drinks. That one's particularly good for if you like to spend time in a bathroom. Tried them all, and nothing worked. But I was convinced that I was smarter than the alcohol. I was convinced that there was a way to keep alcohol in my life. And finally, the 2 things that put me over the edge to accepting permanent sobriety were that Sheri completely detached. Like if I brought rules to her and said, hey, let me tell you my new plan, she just wouldn't give me the time of day to talk about it. If I said, I've decided to be sober again, she wouldn't give that at the time of day. Like there was no more patience, no more comfort left in her for me.
Yeah.
That was super important. At the time, I hated it. But now I recognize that if I wasn't seriously afraid I was going to lose my family, I probably would still be drinking or dead today. The other big component for me was that my depression and anxiety got to a point of being debilitating, to the point where I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, I still basically did. I mean, I cut lots of corners and half-assed a lot of things work-wise and half-assed everything family-wise. But I was still a functioning alcoholic, but just barely. And I have drawn the distinction in the past, and a lot of people resonate with it. I never reached the point of being suicidal, but I definitely was to the point where I didn't care if I lived or not. And that's a really scary place to get to. And so between Sheri's detachment and my mental health crisis, that's what put me over the edge to stop drinking. Yeah. And so that's just the start of the story, right? Because as I think a lot of people on this call would probably resonate with, sobriety doesn't fix anything. It's only the prerequisite when it comes to not just the relationship, but our own individual recovery. And so we've spent the last 6 years trying to figure that out, trying to figure out what I need as an individual, what Sheri needs as an individual, that she needs something. I mean, that's the first hurdle to overcome. And then as stronger, independent people, we've noticed our relationship has never been stronger, the stronger we are as individuals. And that's like mind-blowing for us, you know? I like, Mitchell, that you described yourself as a codependent. I was definitely, like, I don't even understand. I mean, I've had codependency explained to me 1,000 times, and I've read the definition, but I was glommed all over her. She wasn't glommed all over me. So, yeah, codependency goes both ways.
I probably came into the relationship partially detached, because I could have easily, I felt like there were many times where I was like, well, it's just easy to detach because of how I grew
Your
up.
upbringing, yeah.
Right, and the stuff I brought into the relationship. So it was really easy for me to kind of cut you off emotionally and only like live with you on the surface level.
Yeah.
I actually want to touch base on that, because I find that very interesting. You know, Sheri, when you just expressed that you felt it was a bit easier to detach, because do you feel like you saw that in your own family when you were younger? Or do you believe that was a coping skill that helped you stay away from pain when you were a child? What do you feel?
I feel like that was a big coping skill. I remember like my parents, like I said, they were divorced when I was really young. I was 2 and my sister was like 8. But, my dad still lived in the same town, had shared custody, all of that. So I saw lots of that, like, gross, like he would show up to the house drunk or had been drinking after work on a Friday to pick us up to be his weekend. So there was lots of that kind of gross, like arguing and bickering, or he would just show up drunk at the house and my mom would always engage, and it was just so yucky. But then I could see my mom could be mad at like her brother and just cut him off, and they wouldn't have conversations. So it was like my mom and dad had this really weird codependent relationship where she couldn't stop arguing with him when he would come over. Pardon me. But she could so easily cut someone off, a friend, a family member, a distant family member, a neighbor. So that was her way of coping with the uncopable, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if she never really learned to deal with conflict, whether it was in fight or flight. But she also didn't know what to do with drinking because her family never drank at all. So she didn't know. So arguing with my dad, the drunk, is how she dealt with him. But then everybody else, she shut out.
So I actually want to know this too, because how Matt and you were just starting to talk about, like, you both needed to learn kind of individually, and that's how you became connected again. I know a lot of family members on here, Sheri, are probably thinking this question is, okay, if that was a coping skill that you had, how did you challenge that to reconnect when Matt really was working a serious recovery? How did you challenge yourself to try to connect again if that kind of that instinctive survival instinct was to close off, to shut off?
Well, I felt like I had been that way for so many years in our relationship. And I tried coming to him emotionally and discussing things and working out problems. And I just felt like from the beginning of our relationship, like I said, there were a lot of red flags and there was a lot of arguing and bickering and immaturity. But I just felt like there was something worth fighting for. There was something worth being with him. There was a connection that I, and love, obviously, but there was just something else. And I think because I wanted something different than what I grew up with, I wanted something different than my sister had in her 2 relationships with addicts. I just really kind of fought through for my kids to make that change. And it was scary as shit to like open up and be willing and ready to accept his changes, because I had had all these years of rules and empty promises. And then when I finally started seeing a counselor, and they specialized in addiction, and he and his wife had been addicts before. And so when we would talk about that kind of relationship, he was, it was really great and powerful, because he would use the wise mind technique, like what is making you fearful, and using those techniques, like what is keeping me from wanting to open up and believe, Matt's recovery is really going to happen, and just kind of talked me through, like, really, what's the worst case scenario? You've kind of been living it, so you don't really have anything else that, other than just try. So he gave me a lot of really good skills to just kind of push through, and I still have to push through a lot of times. Yep. Even still 6 years later.
And how far into the recovery was that you were like, I need to start like working on how do I attach again? How do I open up again? It wasn't right away, because obviously we don't trust at all. And we're like, we need to see some action instead of just words. So is it like, 6 months, a year, or like a couple years, or?
Yeah, it was probably a little over 2 years that we realized, and we had done a lot of research, and we had read some books about brain chemistry, and had gotten a lot of information out there. So I knew it was going to be a little while. And he had 9 months sobriety and then a 6-month stint twice. Mm-hmm. So I was going nowhere for a while. Like, I was going to stay locked in my position of guarded. And then after a year, and I think this is probably what made it a little easier for me, and I can't say that everybody can do this in their relationship, but after a year of sobriety, Matt wrote this coming out letter, and he sent it to every person in his email contact list, talking about how he was an alcoholic. He had not drank for a year, because he thought, I've just got to shout it out. That's kind of where he came up with the name for our recovery program for addicts, was he just shouted it out. So I was like, wow, that was very ballsy. Now I know he can't turn back. And if he turns to drinking, and if people see him that he is on that email, that's going to be a lot of questioning, and he has a lot of people to be accountable for. So I felt like that gave me a jumping off point of like, holy crap, I've got to work on it. But we were a little blindsided, thinking, oh, well, just removing alcohol, everything will be better. But it wasn't. Yep. And I would still lose it over silly things. And so it was a year and a half later, I started doing counseling and kind of working on my own. And I did some reading of some books and articles, and we have always talked. So I think seeing him after a year not be angry about things I was saying, that really helped a lot too. Because he was really only just angry and nasty when he was drinking, because any other time I would bring a problem or an issue to him, or like if I didn't, wreck the car into a parked car, if he was not drinking, he would never be upset. So I did have to pull back into my memory banks a lot. And that was one of the pieces that my therapist said was, remember why you married this person. Like, what are some things that make him special to you?
Another part that I think it's important to acknowledge is, I forever said we didn't do much damage to the kids. We mostly argued late at night. We would whisper fight. I can't tell you what the 5 are now, but for a long time in early sobriety, I could hold in my hand and say, I can think of the 5 times when we've impacted the kids, and I could list them off. And all the rest of it in my head, we were parents of the year. We had done a great job protecting the kids. And what I didn't understand was that the kids are so intuitive, and they could pick up a sour mood in the room. They could pick up that Sheri was stressed when I walked in the door, and when I wasn't there, she wasn't stressed. So all of this intuitive stuff was happening. And so finally, we would do what we called resentment processing. We still do it. We still do it to this day. Once a week, we have a meeting. It's on both of our calendars. So we treat it with the respect that we would treat, a business meeting or a meeting with a friend or a neighbor or a church, constituent, whatever. So we treat it with respect. We put it on our calendars, and then we meet every week. And sometimes it's a half an hour, and sometimes it's 2 hours. But we carve that out to process resentments with each other. And early on in early sobriety, I mean, that was a bloodbath. I mean, it was awful. But one of the things that came out of that was I recognized, if we don't address this divide with the kids, me thinking they're fine and she knowing that they're not, we're never going to make progress as a couple. And so we sat the kids down, all 4 of them, varying ages, and we said, okay, we want to hear what you think about my drinking and the fact that I was over a year sober at the time, right?
Yeah, you were like almost 2 years sober.
Yeah. Want to hear what you think about it. And there'll be no repercussions. I'll be quiet. I'm not going to yell at you if I don't agree with what you say. Our oldest, she let me have it. Like, she got a lot of it out. It was great. Our second oldest held her hand and just rubbed her hand while she talked. He didn't have anything to say. Our third oldest had some stuff to say. He has really good hearing, and so he would remember a lot of things in the middle of the night that the others didn't. Shocked me, right? Shocked me. And then our fourth was so young that he's like, I don't understand what we're meeting about. Why are we all sitting around in the living room?
But there are some things that we've discovered, like he is a lot more anxious than the other children, and he was born at a time when Matt's drinking was at its heaviest. So we're seeing them as they grow up, the impacts that happen that are not quite as obvious.
But that was important, not just for our kids. And trust me, I get it now. It was 1,000% important for kids. But we were going nowhere as a couple until we did that, because, I mean, I could go on and on. I believe there's a gender component to this stuff. There's been recent research that's talked about a hormone that gets released in a mother's brain when she gives birth. That's a nurturing piece. So I think there's science that backs this up. But the kids were and even the little, what I thought were minor things we had done to them, those were red lines in the sand. And we either fix this or we're not moving forward. And I'm so glad that she held that, drew the line in the sand, that we did do the work.
I was gonna say that's powerful that you guys did that, because unfortunately one of the things, well, it's not unfortunate, but you know what I mean. There's people on here that, they know that we have Maria Reese, but we did not have Maria Reese when we were going through Mitchell's addiction. Maria Reese came after Mitchell's addiction. So a lot of the times people are coming on here and they are asking, like, what about the kids? What about family? And we can't offer that. We can offer our experiences still with holding boundaries, like you're saying, drawing the line and doing that. But I think it's very powerful right now that expressing that. I know a lot of the times I think we want to go into denial sometimes that it's not affecting these little minds around us. However, it is. And so you guys expressing that, and then, Sheri, you holding hard boundaries, I think that's really powerful. And Matt, I think it's really powerful that you allowed your children to speak to you and told them, no matter what you say, no repercussions, like, let it out. Because I know for me, I can even say, I'm not a child, but the child in me was honestly scared, meaning as that I was very terrified of expressing how I felt, because unfortunately in addiction, there was a lot of gaslighting. So I was always scared of a repercussion of me expressing myself. So I think it was very powerful that not only did you say that to your children, you followed through on it. That's what I think is the most powerful, because then your children, even if it's not conscious right in the mind, I think it's a seed that plants, and it goes really saying, like, Daddy's saying these words. I'm sure there was fear of going, is something going to happen? However, when you allowed them to speak, because I can speak just even as a wife, when Mitchell started doing that, it really gained stability and trust, so that I felt like I was more safer to express myself. So I really do find that very powerful. And thank you guys for being vulnerable and sharing that, because I know that will help a lot of people on here.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, I think that, kids are very intuitive, and they do know what's going on. And people, just as human beings, we can sense things and feel energy and stuff. But like, it's never too late to have that conversation like you guys did and ask them what their opinion was and how they felt. I think that's beautiful, because it shows that, like, we are there for them. We are thinking about them. And like, in the long run, we're trying to work our healthy relationship and get back closer together, like you're saying. But like, that needed to happen, but it happened So it was a benefit for them too. And they said, hey, now I can come to you. This is how it affected me. And then, I totally agree too about, getting on the same page with stuff, because throughout the whole addiction with my addiction and with Anna, like our views were just so different. Like it was just so different. In my mind, it was like not that many times. In her mind, it was this and this. And like, I don't think any healing could have happened as a couple until we got on the same page with how crappy it was. Yeah. Like, and just really let each other feel like, okay, I see where you're coming from. Because if that didn't happen, we weren't ever going to grow together.
No. And Matt, one of the things I wanted to go back to, because I think it was pretty powerful, and there's something that I always say, and it was Mitchell teaching me from the rooms, but that word, secrets keep you sick. And I live by that even with my codependency, because I know in my codependency, if I was fearful of things, I would always call them fibs because it didn't make it sound as bad, but they were lies and excuses. And so what I just tell myself is secrets keep me sick. So I use it for me. And when you said, what brought you to the point, because I got goosebumps when she shared that story that you messaged everyone and told them about your alcoholism, like that's powerful, because I do feel there are people that are very nervous and scared, understandably so, to express that. However, do you think it was a massive point of your recovery of opening up about it? And how did you get to the point of opening up about it?
Well, I'm a pretty selfish person, and I think active addiction is very selfish. I think early sobriety is very selfish. And when I say early sobriety, in my experience, not just me, but the other folks we work with, early sobriety is necessarily really selfish for, a year plus. You have so much to learn, so much to work on. You have to find your program, find your tribe. You have to learn about brain chemistry. If you're like me, I needed to know kind of what was happening in the background. You need to learn about the brain chemistry. You need to learn about what, nutrition. What can I eat that's going to help me get out of this hole that I'm in? I've got this resentment processing to do with my wife, which I got to eventually. But, in early sobriety, it's all about me. And I would argue that coming out letter, when I sent all those emails, that was selfish too, because what put me over the edge to finally doing it was I recognized that after 10 years of relapses, and I should say what my relapses looked like. They weren't just, I can't stand the pressure, and I found myself in a liquor store parking lot and I drank for 3 days and I binged and then I was back on the horse. No, I would say I can't live without alcohol in my life and I'm going to find a way to do it. And then I would drink for 9 more months. And then I would take 3 more months off. Like that's what relapse and further attempts at sobriety looked like for me. So even at a year of sobriety, I was scared. I was scared that what I had learned and what I had done wasn't enough. And I said, what can I do to solidify this? And I came up with this idea. I would have gotten there eventually, but I wasn't, kind of a degenerate who was sleeping in the gutter. And, I had lost all of our money. And I know financial issues are a piece of this for a lot of people, ourselves included. I spent a lot of money, but I wasn't destitute, right? I wasn't homeless. And so, I forgot where I was going with that. You don't know either. I know why. So my friends weren't destitute either. So if I got this idea, if I write this story about how bad it was behind closed doors, the thing that none of these people know, I'd go to a party and I'd drink a 6-pack. I'd hit it pretty hard with the other, people in my kind of, demographic, the other hard-working, hard-playing people. But then I'd go home and drink vodka, and they didn't do that necessarily. I'm sure some of them did. But so I needed to write about that. I needed to share that. I needed people to understand about the arguments. I needed people to understand the really dark underbelly side. And so that's why I sent that out, because I knew my friends wouldn't, if I just plopped back down on the bar stool and said, oh, I changed my mind, I'm drinking again. They'd been like, no way. We read what you did to your wife. Like, get the hell out of here. You're not welcome with us anymore. And so I felt like it was another really big hurdle to overcome from the standpoint of there's no going back. And so that's why I say I think everyone gets to the same point eventually as it relates to addiction. I just was attempting to get off before I had lost everything. And I knew telling people about it was going to be a way to stay off the sauce. A lot of people say, that must feel great that all these people read your book and your blog and podcast. And But, to me, it's still a selfish act. Yes, I love that that we have community, and I love that we meet all these wonderful people and hear their stories, and I love watching them get healthy too. No question. But I love it because, that's just kind of how I'm wired. I'm an extrovert, and it's cool to see it happen. So yes, I'm happy for them, but I'm more happy for me. I'm happy for me because it's cool to watch, and I get to interact with these awesome people. So the selfishness continues.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and then before the email, you had it constructed for a while and was sitting there, and you had a certain date that you were going to send it out, and you didn't know how it was going to be received. You didn't know at the time if you were going to lose one of your jobs as a high school soccer coach. We didn't know how it was going to play out,
I thought for sure I was going to lose that job.
Yeah. Actually. So, I guess the silver lining was you obviously didn't lose the job. Like, we still had our own business. So all of that was great. But the people that came forward, and it wasn't even necessarily people with addiction, but people that had other kinds of struggles, people that opened up and felt like they could share with us. And then I found out, like, a really good friend of mine, she was dealing with the same thing.
We think we're the only ones. We think it's this big secret. Yeah. But there's literally millions of people doing the same thing. And some of those people came out to Sheri and said, my husband drinks like your husband did. What do I do?
Yeah. And it was, and I had known her for a long time. Our sons are the same age. I just could not believe it. Like, she never once leaked any sort of hint or piece of information that her husband drank like that. And so I just felt like very honored that people stepped up and wanted to share with us. And I mean, I thought for sure there'd be a lot of people that would said, good God, Matt, it's about time. Thank God. But all of them were like, because he didn't act like that in front of people.
Yep.
Very often.
Yep. And Sheri, I was going to ask you, because I know I usually hear, with addiction, there's a lot of shame at play. And I feel that we as family members feel a lot of shame and guilt at times. And I think that's why we keep it secret, whether it's believing, we're not being good enough as an individual, as a parent, as a worker, as different things. Did you face any shame? And if you did, how did you work through it?
Well, I definitely faced shame. I thought I was ashamed of myself that I was staying in this relationship. And it was everything I did not want because of my upbringing. But I also felt like if I left him, then I would just be even feeling more shameful. Like I didn't give it my all.
And I helped her with that shame, boy. I would tell her, don't be a failure at this like your mother was. Don't be a failure like your sister. I mean,
yeah,
I did. I mean, I was just manipulative and awful.
So I think like, you said secrets keep you sick. So once he wrote that letter and it was out, well, my story was out too. And so that we had so many people that made us feel so good about it, that helped a lot. That helped enormously for me right in the beginning, that I had several people reach out to me and say, wow, I'm so proud of you. This is so wonderful to hear. I love how you're sharing your story. Those sort of things. Like one of my friends that was a social worker was like, you have no idea how impactful this has been on probably these people that have read the email, because you're really changing other people's story. Hopefully they're getting help. So I think that helped a lot instead of keeping it secret. And then I had to I feel like it's weird. Like my level of self-confidence just varies all over the place. Like I can feel very confident outside of the house, but I would come home to him being drunk and feel like I was just worthless. So knowing that I didn't have, because it had been a year and we hadn't had those arguments that had made me feel shameful, I was slowly gaining my confidence a little bit more while we were kind of keeping the secret. And we also took like a whole year off of social engagements. We didn't interact with people. And so it just kind of gave me a time to really figure out who I was. And, and I did some educating and some reading and things like that. I didn't have a group. I didn't do therapy yet. So I think that helped me just kind of recenter myself
Mhm.
And we often suggest that people take social engagements off because that's a lot of pressure to go out there being sober. So even for me, it was a lot of pressure off because then I didn't have to worry about whether or not he was going to feel pressure to drink.
Well, a
And
lot of my relapses had been like on the way to a social event. I'd say, by the way, Sheri, I've been thinking and I've decided I'm going to start drinking. And oh, by the way, we're in public now, so you can't start yelling at me.
yeah,
And then I drink for 9 more months. So there was that taking time off from social occasions was helpful to both of us and super important, I think.
Okay, so that helped with triggers too, because that's one of the things that Mitchell and I try to do is I know when we hear the word triggers, we really do associate that with addict and addiction, but not with family members. And so one of my things is I try to express we as family members have triggers as well, and we need to learn to identify them, because I think as much as I always wanted Mitchell, like, tell me your triggers, tell me what's going on, tell me how to do this. It was, if I'm asking for that, then I need to recognize my own and also do the same and express those to Mitchell. And again, I know that's terrifying in early recovery because we're very scared of opening up and being vulnerable again. That's also where that comes in, the separating the addict from the true individual, because I just felt like if I didn't tell the triggers, then I would always believe the addict was in front of me. However, when I voiced myself, and Mitchell did different, it showed me Mitchell. And what I need to learn in my own journey is also is if I need to always voice myself and hold boundaries. So if a reaction comes back at me, I need to learn, is this what I want to continue doing, or is it different boundaries? So I like that you just talked about that, because when you said that a little bit further, Matt, it made me go, oh, okay, so that was one of Sheri's triggers too, is social events. And was that something that, like, how do you feel? I'm going to actually ask this. How, each of you, how do you feel, or what is the most important thing you do to support one another?
Well, you're kind of leading right to one of them for me. Respecting the fact that Sheri's triggers, respecting that the resentments that she feels, that those are real. I told you this a few weeks ago, Mitchell. One of the ways in which I feel like you're a unicorn compared to some of the people that we work with is you get that, man. That's important. You get that Anna has been through some real serious shit. And a lot of people don't. They think, I quit drinking for you. What more do you want? The alcohol's gone. Like, we're good now. Like, I just stop bringing up the past. That's not helpful to me. That's just not how it works. And I know that not only from my own relationship. I'd like to say I was smart enough to pick it up from Sheri, but I wasn't. We had to start working with other people, and I would see the pattern repeated, and I'd say, oh, these other spouses have huge trauma from their lives living with addiction. Wow, that must be what Sheri's talking about. And so just, having respect for that process, that it is traumatic. We just did a podcast episode that came out today's Monday, where we talked about how many situations, I think this will put some light on it. How many times in my life was I in a situation where I wasn't, I was drunk, but I wasn't in control of my own destiny, making my own decisions. I was physical enough. I was loud enough. I was demanding enough that I was more or less in control. Contrast that with the number of times where Sheri was in a situation with an alcoholic husband who had been drinking, who had the car keys, right? Who demanded to drive, who would yell and scream and make a scene, and how many times was she not in control of her own destiny and the alcoholic was? That's trauma. Like, I don't know what else to call that. That, maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, I wasn't either safe or in a situation where I was in control. That happened on a regular basis to her. And that's not just acknowledgement of that, but embracing of that and saying, oh my God, look what you've been through. We're supposed to have this mutual protection agreement, right? We get married. And by the way, I hate the wedding vows. I could go on and on about that, but I won't worry about that right now. But we have this mutual protection and trust agreement. I protect you, you protect me, we trust each other, right? And then the person that you are the closest to because of that mutual protection agreement is the most dangerous person in your life. Process that for a minute. How do I expect you to bounce back from that? So just acknowledging that and giving her all the space she needs is the thing that I try to do most to be, supportive of your recovery. I'm kind of on I'm on a charge about this.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I love the passion in that, because I'm going to be honest, like, I'm going to have a follow-up question for Sheri, because obviously he's my husband here, but hearing him talk about the addiction and really talking about the trauma, and it validates me. It like, and that's why I want to know if it validates you, because I'm sitting here listening to that and really thinking about same thing. As I remember Mitchell looking at me and going, just talk to me, I'm here for you. And my mind would just be like pulled, and I'm like, I am trying to talk to you, but you're the one that keeps hurting me. Like, I don't, and I would get like, it would hurt. And so hearing him say that, it's just, it's validating hearing it from someone that suffered with addiction, now seeing it and feeling it. And I feel heard and seen. And I want to know, when he says those things, do you still have those moments where it might be talking to somebody else, but do you feel seen and do you feel heard?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And this is kind of weird, because I think because I grew up like pushing my feelings down, that honestly, I didn't even know some of the feelings I was having early on. And so Matt would draw out, like, are you feeling this? Could this be a scenario? Like we just have brains that work differently. I don't want to talk about things. I want to shove it down. I just want to plow through surface level. He goes deep, and everything has to be a conversation.
I'll get out of the shower and I'll be like, let me tell you the 3 things I thought about. And then she'll make fun of me, and I'll be like, well, what do you think about in the shower? And she's like, nothing. I can think about nothing when I'm in the shower.
The opposite. That's hilarious.
I'm like, how do you do that? I don't know how you do that.
So I can do that. So I don't overthink it. Like when we would have our email, I would just go to cleaning. Like that was and I didn't have to think about things. So having him like say those things over and over, just tell me what you're thinking. I promise I'm not going to get mad. And then I would see those reactions happen when I would say something hurtful as we're going through our resentment processing, and seeing his reaction built that trust back up. But then him kind of working and saying, is this something you're feeling, or is this could be a feeling? Because honestly, I didn't even really know what I was feeling, because I had a lot of numbness. And I think that helped make me feel more comfortable, and then definitely more seen and validated. And he'll even say, it was really bad for you. And I'm like, as long as you, like, even in my mind was, when you talk to the kids and you get through that, then I think we're good. I don't care how you treated me. I don't want you to sidestep talking to the kids, because you really screwed them up a lot of ways. And I want you to recognize that. Me, I'm adult, I'm fine, I'll deal. Because that's what I saw growing up. And I think that's really what made me feel like I feel supported and seen, and the trust just shot through the roof with that.
I think that's such an important point. The impact of addiction on the loved ones, on the family and the spouses, gets downplayed by everyone in our society. Gets downplayed by me, the addict, gets downplayed by you, the one that suffered. It wasn't that bad. You never beat me. You never left us. So it wasn't that bad. And that's not the way to find healing, is to downplay it. And then go out into the big bad world, right? Everyone, when I start talking about my addiction, everyone wants to know how's Matt doing? Is he still sober? How's he doing? Not once does anyone ask her how she's doing. So yeah, we've got a huge societal problem for our understanding of the impact of addiction on loved ones and spouses, for sure.
Yep. And then I do want to ask Sheri, what do you think is one of the things that Matt's done for you to support? Would you think it was the one that he said? And then also, what do you think you do to support Matt?
Well, I feel like I do a lot to support him. I feel like my kind of role in our relationship was because I have let him be the creative mind in like our business and our career path. And I think that that's been something that I know was very kind of shut off at the end of the relationship. Like we owned our own business and we were getting ready to end the business because it was just time for us to be done. And you were getting sober, and I feel like I was very supportive in you. And I feel like I gave a lot of trust to you when you said, I would like to write a book about our relationship. I would like to make this our career. And I was like, how is there going to be a career? Sounds like a hobby because you don't get paid for hobbies. But he was like, I know he's very smart and he's always thinking. And I was like, okay, if you think you can figure out how we can turn this helping and letting our story be known and helping others into a way that we can earn a living, not a fancy big house living, but we can maintain what we have. I am all for that because I just felt like I could see his passion and I could see that I think he's a unicorn too. In fact, he has this crazy unicorn like kid's hat. One of his
Nice.
one of his like members of Shout Sobriety sent him. So I was like, I can see the wheels turning and I can see that he is learning so much so quickly about the lack of information that's out there. Like he's seeing what is missing in the recovery world for my side and for couples. I think that's how I've been most supportive to you.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I mean, I have some really terrible ideas, guys, and she'll listen to them and tolerate them. But she tells me when they're terrible too. She doesn't give me enough rope to hang myself. She cuts that off a little early. So yeah, that's what I would have answered to your question.
That's been mutually beneficial because it's showed that I trust him again. Because we kind of went into our relationship where I was a pastry chef and I said, listen, I can't be a parent and I can't be a pastry chef. I can't do those kind of crazy hours. That's just not who I am. I know there are people that do that, but if we have kids, I would like to be a stay-at-home mom when they're young. And he was totally supportive of that. And so he was like, okay, well, we'll try to figure out a lifestyle that will support both of us. And I trusted him in the beginning. And then a lot of that trust went away and I was nasty as we were running our business. We never were bankrupt or anything, but I was like.
But it did not go as planned.
Not go as planned. Sure. And I rubbed it in his face all the time. And I'm sure that just accelerated the drinking. But I think that was very helpful that I've allowed that trust to come back in to the relationship, because I don't know if I would have been stubborn and said, no, you have to go get a normal job, I mean, you wouldn't be as far along in your recovery, but I don't think we would be as close. I think we would just be very surface level still, and we wouldn't have this deeper connection that we do now.
Yep. Because I still remember also too, Matt, like what you're talking about, because what you guys are also talking about is once we come out of our addiction, once we come out of our codependency, we're really discovering who we are. Or I remember Matt, like talk about discover and rediscover. And the thing is that's something that I think does happen sometimes is someone comes out of addiction and they blossom into who they've always authentically been inside. And then the codependent doesn't want that because we really want them close and it's fearful for them going off. And then also as the codependent, if we do our own work, we blossom into something also that may be different than what was before, because I know that, yes, I'm still Anna, but I'm definitely a different version of myself even before the addiction ever came place. The addiction actually helped me blossom into who I think I've always known was inside. And I know I have more growing to do, but it did change into something different. And I think that's what's scary is I think that we kind of fall under this idea, or I'll say I did, is that when Mitchell goes to rehab, he's going to come back and it's all going to go back to the way that it originally was before the drinking really was there. But there's never going back. And I tell people it can turn into the most beautiful thing, though, because Mitchell's still Mitchell, but he's more. He's so much more. And so it's one of those things is it sounds like you guys allowed each other to blossom into the hopes and dreams that you wanted and you had, and you didn't I always think about codependency as we think we're giving a hug, but we're really choking somebody out type of deal. And so the trust comes back again. And then we just kind of allow people to blossom into who they're supposed to be.
Absolutely. I remember having conversations with Matt and he said something along the lines of like, we'll see how it goes. I mean, heck, who knows? We may not even really like each other when we're kind of working through this. I mean, I hope so, but maybe too much water under the bridge. Maybe we've changed into two different people, so let's try to work on it and see what happens. And thankfully for us, it did like blossom into something much better, but we can see how there are relationships that don't make it because those changes, and those are probably really good changes for the individuals, that they've blossomed into someone they were supposed to be, and who they were really supposed to be.
When it
Yeah.
comes to long-term relationships, I think we've got love and like backwards. I never stopped loving Sheri, and because I was the father of her kids, and because of all the water under the bridge, there was part of her that never stopped loving me, but she didn't like me at all.
Yeah.
And we got to the point where we, that was a huge light bulb moment to realize, oh my God, the like is more important than the love. Because there's part of that love that'll never go away. But if we don't like each other, we're wasting both of our times for sure.
Yeah, I think, and I think, that is where you have to get to. And I think that's where you guys got to, is like letting each other, do what they needed to do. And you're right. Like, everybody on here, like the loved one has so much trauma, and like they're healing and we're healing. Yes, but they're still staring at the same being that hurt them. Right. It's, even though I'm different, I'm healing, they're still looking at that. And it's like, how do I get past that? And I think when you give that room to find that I like you again, like I like hanging out with you, I like spending time with you, I like that you're changing, like, and having that kind of funny thing, like maybe we won't like each other anymore. Like that's kind of the things that we want to get to, because it's saying I'm willing to try, and I hope there is, but maybe there's not, but we're still going to go on this journey for ourselves. I think that's the part that we want everybody to get to, because we hold on to that. I want it to be the certain way, and it's never going to be that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's going to be,
yeah,
have it. And then when we mix that, it's going to be something else. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and even if the relationship survives, we always talk to people, you've got to take time to mourn the loss of what you thought was going to happen. Yeah. Even if you come out the other side and it's stronger and you make it, still not what you planned. No. And if you don't give yourself the time to process that, that's just more baggage you're carrying around that you'll have to deal with later.
You actually told me that I needed to do this process. You were a couple of years into sobriety, and you were given that piece of information, and I was like, what? Yeah, I didn't get it. And I think that was one of the things that helped kind of me on the trajectory of, I need a lot of work for myself. Whether it's because of the crap I brought into the relationship, things that I was enduring during the relationships, things I was feeling, how alcohol changed me.
Yep.
And then I have this grieving and mourning process that I have to do.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just, it's hard. It's hard. And that seems to always come up when I'm talking with people too, is like getting the person I'm talking to wants the other person to do some work too, and knows that there needs to be work done. But it's like, how do you bring up to someone who doesn't know or necessarily think they need to do that work, that it could be beneficial to do that work, right? Because they have to bring down their pride and ego. They say, there needs to be work done. And it's like, I can go on that journey too, because it's awesome, but it's scary. And like, sometimes we just don't want to change.
Yeah, I think that's it too. I wanted to go up here. There's a bunch of people that are just expressing that they love it, that they love hearing the talk. And Abbott wrote, keep on keeping on. I'm 36 years clean and sober. Hell yeah, Abbott. Awesome job. Ashley said when we were talking about the kids before, that is so true. Kids do know. And I remember that was one of the things that was really eye-opening. Jared Casey, which was the clinical director, I remember him expressing that they've done studies that children 7 years and under, those are the ones that we think really don't understand and don't take it in. He said 7 years and under, that's actually where trauma affects them the most, because that's when their core beliefs are being created, their coping skills are being created. And when you express that you're youngest, you see more anxiety. And that was just, didn't really remember the details, but it's that book that I just keep talking about, The Body Keeps the Score. I just think that's a very powerful book, because I think a lot of the times, and that's why I feel like us as families, we do have to learn our triggers. And sometimes it starts understanding our body, because a lot of the times our mind's not catching up, our mind's trying to protect us. But like that book says, the body keeps the score. And so I've never realized, I went through trauma when I was a child. And I think the reason, I honestly think I was misdiagnosed with ADHD, but I actually have anxiety. And so what it did is cause me to look like I was unmotivated, but I'm hyperventilating, needing to get questions done or a test on time, believing I'm stupid, unfocused, all these things. And then people went, oh, she has ADHD because I was a happy-go-lucky running around chasing butterflies child, but that's just Anna. But they lumped it in, and now I'm recognizing it and really going, but I think I might have anxiety, and it was just quick to that diagnosis rather than taking the time to go, why do you feel this way, Anna? And so I think it's very interesting because that was around where my trauma occurred too, was around that age. And so I find that interesting. And I think I want you guys to know, like, I really appreciate you talking about your children and what addiction does, because there's so many families out there that we just don't know what to do. We're so scared. And honestly, Sheri, what you said earlier is like, we have that shame of, we're shameful, we're in it, but then we also feel shameful if we leave. So it's all this like real hard, but talking about the truths about things. I always tell people, I'm never going to tell someone to stay, and I'm never going to tell people to go. It's someone's own decision. I will never know someone's life. And so just you expressing your story, just lets knowledge out there for people to make the best decision that is for them.
When we started this work, especially when we started doing the podcast together, our like stated goal was, let's help people recover their marriages. And quickly that turned into no. Let's help people recover individually and make the best relationship decision that they can make, because we quickly started to encounter relationships where only one person's doing the work, for instance.
Yep.
Or, there's lots of variety of reasons why. But, sometimes in that big, probably the biggest decision for most of us that we'll ever make that should I stay or should I go question, often the healthiest decision is to go. And we didn't know that when we started doing it. We thought, we can help people, muddle through it. Sometimes muddling through is not the right way to go. So that respect that you just, talked about, giving to both sides of the equation, and that they've got to do the right thing for themselves and get that help that they need individually, so important.
Yep. And I like that you said that too, because Matt, that was one of the things when I started coaching. It was the first time I coached a husband. And we talked about codependency, worked on all these coping skills. And then I remember having the call that they were getting a divorce. I remember going, did I cause this? Like I called my own therapist and was like, this isn't what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to help. And I remember them already going, Anna, here's another challenge of your codependency. You're there to help people. You're not there to control marriages or to do that. And it had to be a switch of what you just said, Matt, of realizing that it's about helping the individual, and they're going to make the choice. And I also need to separate myself from other people's decisions because it's the right decision for them. But I remember just going like, oh my God, did I cause this? And I do this to somebody? And it was really realizing that I remember that therapist going, Anna, you help someone find their own decision. That's not a bad thing, but it took me a while to work through. So I'm glad that you said that, because that made me not feel alone.
When we started on the podcast, I would say things like, gosh, we're just more committed to marriage than some people are. And, because of my family background with nobody getting divorced, it just means more to me. And we got called on it. We got called on it by a listener really early on. She's like, how dare you? I've fought for decades to save my marriage. Marriage means as much to me as anything in the world. And ultimately, for my kids and for my own health, I had to make the worst decision I've ever had to make, the hardest decision I've ever had to make. How dare you be sanctimonious and pretend like marriage is more important to you than it is to me? And I was like, talk about a light bulb moment. And everything shifted from that moment on.
Yeah, and I think that you probably see the difference between my sister, who's almost 7 years older than I am, that lived in an environment with arguing and drinking. And my mom, divorced my dad. And I mean, yes, there was arguments, but I didn't live in it constantly the way my sister did. And the difference between she and I think is just flooring in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
With her. Yeah.
Yep. I like that. I like though also that you guys, I think that's one of the most powerful things. Like same thing here is I want people to challenge me.
Yeah.
I don't know it all. I'm never going to be that person that pretends to know it all. And so the thing is, I like that you allowed somebody, again, another safe place for them to challenge you. and you take something and reflect upon it. And then you created your own change in what worked for you. Because I think that's powerful, because that's what support systems need to be. We're not always going to be right in things. We're just sharing our experiences, the knowledge that we've learned. And there's going to be people that come in and that are going to challenge us. And I always, is it uncomfortable? Yeah, I go into my codependency and go, people hate me. And I go into my ball. But the truth is I need to realize that it's honestly really good to be challenged, because it really goes back to, if I believe that I know it all, it goes back to that quote that I've been talking about. The unexamined life is not worth living. So if I'm not examining life and people aren't challenging me, then I'm no longer living. I want to be challenged, even if it's uncomfortable. So again, like, that shows how much a great support you two are, because it shows that someone can come from a very vulnerable state, express their feelings, and you don't shoot them down. You actually take what they say and respect it and challenge it and create your own. Like, that's really powerful. Because I will say to everybody on here, Mitchell and I had the honor of going to one of their support groups, and it was so amazing seeing the support that was in there. And then now, just like you guys sharing this story, you are a great support system and ally to have in this journey. And I really will say, because it, especially for families, because exactly like we said before, unfortunately, there's not a lot out there for families. And what you guys do, it's important, and it is definitely a value. So if anybody's on here, again, curious about anything and of the meetings, of the books and the podcasts, go to their, I linked it up on their Facebook page. Okay. That's on there. You can find even more from there, their book, their website, all this stuff. But guys, like, I will say this 1,000 times. If you do not have a support system, you are doing yourself a disservice. You cannot do it alone. Just as we look as our addicts in recovery and we look at them and go, you can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. You need it. Look in the freaking mirror. And you need support too. You are goddamn worth it. So what you need to do is do that little bit for you. Take that little bit of courage that you have. I know that you do, okay? And reach out. Go to their site. Look up the support meetings they have. Read the books. Do these things. Sorry, I got passionate for a second, but hold on. I wanna say what these people said on here. They wanted to say, and what a moment that you guys have been doing to attest to your future, to helping people. Other people said, oh my God, that's me. You're talking about 43 years in codependency. Powerful. Lillian said, wow, what a stellar explanation. Thank you. If only I could hear and believe if it ever had that kind of communication. Getting that sort of validation seems freaking possible. What do we do if we know that type of validation from the ones that hurt you will never, ever come? What do you do? How can someone move forward if the person you want the validation the most for will never give you that validation, or you feel never will?
I think that you said it. Find your tribe, find your support group. You can process your resentments. You can work through some of this if you're never going to get that from the person that hurt you the most, because that's often the case, sadly.
Those resentments have to be processed.
Yeah.
For if the marriage is going to make it, and make it in a healthy way, it's great if those resentments can be processed this way. And I had to get to the point where hearing the Sheri's trauma didn't re-traumatize me. It takes a long time. But once I got there and I could hear her say, which it's not about an amends process, not about me apologizing, it's about me acknowledging that her truth is the truth.
Yep.
And so that's great if you can do it that way. But if you can't, then we're right behind you, singing just as loud as you were about the importance of that support group. You've got to find people who get it. It's not enough that your loved ones love you, that your mom or your sister loves you. If they've never been through it, you need to find people who get it to process those resentments with, because you just can't keep pushing it down. It's coming back up one way or the other.
Yeah, I think the same. I think you have to just get that out with like-minded individuals, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes you're in a situation and someone says something, and like you're getting validated in that moment. You know what I mean? So you just have to put yourself out there. It's just hard. But I mean, as I always tell Anna, like, I can empathize with her, but really she wants some validation from the addict and the addict who hurt her. but that's never going to happen because hopefully the addict's never back, right? The addict never comes back. Healthy Mitchell, she can get some validation from and some empathy from, but like that person that was hurting you is a totally different entity. You know what I mean? And you're never really going to get that. So it's kind of the same thing that person's asking. Like, if you're never going to get it from them, how do you get it? You know?
I want to say here, because a lot of people are asking now, like, how do you find Sheri and Matt on Facebook or podcasts? And I know I just said what I thought. So can you express what the actual real thing may be?
Yeah, the best starting point for us is the Untoxicated podcast. And I say that because it's free. You can listen to a few episodes. You can decide if you like what you don't or not. From that, in the intro and outro of all of our episodes, we talk about the other resources that are available. They're linked in our show notes. There's an episode you guys did with us a couple of years ago, so you can listen to that. So the Untoxicated podcast, just wherever you get podcasts, that's really the best place to start. You can find our book there from there as well. But we are scattered. We've got like 4 websites. Like this was not well architected from the beginning. But so start there at the podcast and you'll find everything else.
Okay, awesome. So what we'll do, guys, is we will stop there for tonight because we did tell my parents only till 9:30 with watching Miss Maria Reese. So we want to be impeccable with our words. Remember, read the 4 Agreements. Great book. But we really thank you guys for coming on and sharing your message and supporting families, because there was a lot of comments on here also that, you know, the families, they do feel get forgotten and there's not a lot out there. So this is very, very important. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time and having a discussion with us.
Well, thanks for having us. Yeah, we feel so like bonded to y'all in message, and we've worked together a few times now. And I hope we get an opportunity to continue to do that. And because I just love these sessions with you guys. You guys are awesome. Anna, I noticed your chi is looking particularly vibrant and healthy in your today. That may or may not be an inside joke. I don't want to sound weird complimenting someone else's chi, but looking good, guys.
Thanks, guys, for being on. Really, it's a privilege to have you on here, an honor.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have you guys on either just for a random live that we have or another Monday night meeting, and we can do a different topic for different things. But I know this helped a lot of people, so thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Well, we'll all see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern for another live.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.